I think the time has come. Thank you all for joining us on this info call about the Tech Congress Congressional Innovation Fellowship. And so I'll ask for all of you, as you have questions throughout, please drop them in the chat. We have a couple of people on the team monitoring the chat, so we'll collect them and try to answer, especially questions that are asked more than once. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Grace McKinney. I'm the Deputy Director here at Tech Congress. At the moment, I am the Interim Executive Director because Travis, our founder and fearless leader, is currently on sabbatical, but he'll be back in August, well before any of you join. And then let me pass it over to my teammate Maya to introduce themselves.
I'm Maya. I'm the Program Associate here at TechCongress, and I will pass it over to Christina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christina. I'm the Programs Intern at Tech Congress. And I'll lastly pass it on to Timur.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Timur Razik. I'm the Communications Manager here at Tech Congress. Welcome, and I'm really excited to get to know you all today. Over to you, Grace.
Awesome. That's the team, or the team that's on at the moment. And so this call is being recorded, as I'm sure is very obvious because it announced it. But just as an FYI, we always record our info calls. And so I'm really going to walk you all through a little bit about the organization, Tech Congress itself, and then obviously get into exactly how the fellowship works. So I have been at Tech Congress for a little more than a year. Timur is very new. Maya's been here for about a year, and Christina has actually been interning with us for this is your third semester, right, Christina?
Yep.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So the whole reason behind the whole concept behind Tech Congress is that when Travis was working in Congress as a staffer, he needed to work on a bill related to technology. I forget exactly what it was. I'm pretty sure it was like something privacy related, and he just couldn't find anyone who was enough of an expert to help him on it. Like he wasn't an expert, and he couldn't find anyone else who was in kind of all of Congress. And that is really why when he left, he started our organization with the idea of building a fellowship to act as a pipeline for tech expertise into Congress. So Congress has about 3,500 staff total. And by our count, there are, and this is not exact, it is through our own stalking. By our count, there are 14 staff members with meaningful training or experience with technology. That's a really small percentage. So the good news is that Congress is a very small place, particularly if anyone is familiar with the executive branch. Congress is so much smaller. And so our intervention in Congress is working. And really our goal is, so out of 3,500 staffers total, the calculation is that about 600 of those staffers work meaningfully on policy. So are policy are working meaningfully on bills as they're written. And so our goal is to have 60 staffers in Congress have a background in technology. On average, about 10 people are probably going to work on a bill before it's passed. So by that calculation, we want at least one of those people to have a background in technology. At this point, for I would say pretty much all legislation, at this point, technology is involved with pretty much every facet of our society. So that's our calculation. That's our vision for the organization, and it is working because this time last year when I edited this script, instead of 14 members having a tech background, we had only 9. So it is going, but it is going slowly, which is why we're so happy that so many of you are interested in the fellowship. And so for that's our.
Oh, you're on mute. I don't know what happened, but you're on mute now. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. That was so weird. was talking with my hands. Our mission for the org is really or for Tech Congress is really three objectives. So that is, we want to help create cross-sector leaders. That would be all of you. So that means people who may not have a background in policy or in government. They're kind of learning how that works. And then even people, I would say, like my experience before this was working in and around the executive branch. Congress is very different, so it's not exactly a different sector, but it is definitely a whole different area to learn from. So to create cross-sector leaders, to catalyze Congress to realize that it has a tech deficit, I would say this is where we're doing the best. A lot of offices recognize that they need this expertise, and thus our fellows tend to be pretty in demand, which is good. We would, of course, like for more of them to hire people on full time. And finally, the ultimate goal, which is to keep Congress up to date as they are making policy and also as they're kind of running themselves. And so then our values around this are it's really important for us to emphasize that diversity and inclusion are core to what we do, which includes like that we are non-ideological, so we're nonpartisan. We do not take positions on issues, and our goal is to bring on half of our cohort to serve with Republican offices and half of our cohort to serve with Democratic offices. So we're looking for people with a broad range of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, including those from underrepresented communities in technology and in Congress. We also want our cohorts to be balanced. So some of you may have applied before. We definitely have had people apply more than once and get in subsequent tries. And sometimes that really is down to us wanting to have a balanced cohort ideologically, but also like in terms of background. Like we don't want everyone to be from academia in one cohort, but we want some. We don't want everyone to necessarily be directly from the private tech industry, but we definitely want some. So all of that is to say we're really looking to build a balanced class, especially because we found that a lot of our fellows tend to collaborate on legislation, which is really great, both bipartisanly and across different committees and that kind of thing. So the day-to-day for how this really works as a fellow is that you perform duties similar to other congressional staff, really just by applying your experience in technology to a variety of work, which includes researching relevant policymaking, interfacing with members and staff to educate them on these issues, writing legislation, which is, I think, the one that everyone thinks of, but there are others, preparing for committee hearings, which is actually a big part of a lot of what our current fellows are doing. There are a lot of committee hearings at the moment that are relevant. So preparing for committee hearings, markups, or investigations, including writing questions for witnesses. So for example, we had a fellow who was on the Judiciary Committee who participated in the testimony, gathering the testimony from Frances Haugen, that kind of thing. And then also leading coalitions with partners and other groups. So that is like building coalitions within Congress, and trying to kind of find people with who are coming from offices with similar goals you can collaborate with. I would really encourage you all to dig in on what you would be doing day to day by taking a look at our blog, which I think we'll drop the links in the chat. We have a blog post from an alumni, Joel Burke. We also have Lars, who just recently he was in our last cohort and he just wrapped up. And he was with the Senate Small Business Committee on the R side, and then we have Crystal Grant. We also have a new blog post from Crystal Grant, who worked for Senator Warren. So also, I would say Lars and Crystal will give you like a good. You can kind of see the difference between working with the committee versus working with a personal office. Thank you, Maya. And so the way that the fellowship itself actually works is that in the first, so right now we're in recruitment, then obviously we'll do selections. But you would start in usually the first full week of January with orientation, which is 3 weeks. And we go into how Congress itself is, how it functions, how it is I don't want to say designed, since that's not the right word. It's not exactly designed, but how it's structured, and kind of the ecosystem around Congress, which includes like lobbyists and like lobbying groups, of which there are many. Professional organizations, that kind of thing, and also get into the skills that you'll need to do your job. So how to write an oversight letter, how to like plan and organize a hearing and prepare questions if that's part of what you're doing, and how to work on legislation, and also how to do research. A big part of this role is doing research. So we also provide insight into like the tools that you'll have available to do that. And then and a part of the orientation is really, so that's kind of all tactical skills. And then we also, as a part of orientation, want to help build your network, especially for those of you who are new to this sector and or new to DC. And so we'll do an event with our alumni, and we try to help connect you with other people who are kind of working in the tech policy space and like the public interest tech space more generally. Last year, we did field trips to the Congressional Research Service and the Government Accountability Office, which I think people tended to find really helpful. So we'll probably do that again. Yeah, and so that's the first 3 weeks. Second 3 weeks is placement. Well, really, I would say second 4 weeks usually is placement. And that's where it really runs like a mini condensed job search. That's where you're finding your office. So the way that you kind of go about this is once you're done with orientation, we send out all of your information and bios to the chiefs of staff in House and Senate, committee staff directors, and then we also hold a launch event to kind of, as sort of all of your debut into being able to be hired. I am often fielding emails from offices during orientation who have already identified someone who they might want to reach out to, and we really try and hold them back, and we really try and make sure that our fellows have the time to complete orientation before they start on placement and start figuring out where they want to work. And so you will sit down with us and we'll help you talk about the tech issues that you're interested in and help you figure out like where you should be focusing some of your own outreach efforts, because you'll want to kind of have a mix of fielding inquiries from offices that are interested in you and also thinking about if there's anywhere in particular where you would really like to learn more and potentially serve. And so then you spend those weeks having a lot of coffees, like a lot of phone calls, a lot of honestly in-person conversations with different offices, some of which are called interviews, some of which are not called interviews, but then you find out later that they sort of were an interview, because you might get a job offer. So that's always a fun little surprise that happened this last time. And you also will work directly we have alumni advisors who are all our alumni who have been in Congress more recently to kind of help you work with you, help you make decisions, help you make connections, to make sure that you land in a place where you will want to be and where you can learn a lot. And then for day to day, that's where, I already talked about that. I have that twice, sorry. And then we have, okay. And then obviously during the fellowship, we have ongoing program for you. Our goal is to help you all succeed. And we want to help you connect with people in Washington and people in tech and public interest tech that we think can help you do that. So we have quarterly networking events. We have a speaker series that we're actually starting back up this year. So it should be kind of underway by the time you all join. And we have like Slack channels, so you have access to all of our alumni to ask questions. And then we also offer 3 sessions with a career coach for you as you get towards the end of your fellowship so that you can start to have some help thinking about what's next. And getting to what's next, about 1/3 of our fellows stay in government, which either could mean in Congress or in other areas in government, could be federal, could be state. About 1/3 end up in like the nonprofit civil society, which honestly often looks like think tanks. And then about 1/3 go back to the private sector, or I guess in some cases theoretically go to the private sector for the first time, but often it's back. And then let me talk a little bit about, let me pause and see, Maya, are there any Maya or Christina, are there any high level questions that I should answer now before I get into the selection process?
We just got a question in the chat about fellowship eligibility. So what qualifies an applicant as being eligible?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. We accept applications from citizens and DACA recipients. Unfortunately, that's it. So that's the breadth that we can accept. Okay, great. I can move on to selection process since that was sort of a question about selection process anyway. So when we're in the selection process, we are, what we're looking for is like tech ability and knowledge, tech translation, ability to work well on a team, and then career. We are kind of, as often our sort of tiebreaker is like, is this a career catalyst? So for example, like what that really means is we are less likely to admit someone who has experience working in Congress before than someone who doesn't. I would say I've gotten this question before. If you've done like one summer internship in Congress 7 years ago, that doesn't disqualify you in any way. It's just like if you have been a congressional staffer before, I would say you might get admitted, but you will kind of be you'll be very qualified, but you'll probably be moved sort of to the bottom of our qualified list. Other than that, we this year have really expanded our verticals to kind of what constitutes a technologist, and a lot of this has come from our experience of seeing what our fellows, like the work that our fellows are doing and what they're being asked to do. By their offices, and so that means that we have had fellows from more like non-traditional tech backgrounds. For example, we had like a journalist who had been covering tech policy. We had someone from biotech, someone who was coming in with like climate oriented, like tech climate oriented background. And so this year we have called out a few specific verticals. So we're looking for people who have some experience with, I would say, like digital delivery. So have you worked in government before, delivering on technical products? And that definitely doesn't have to be at the federal level. And we're also looking for, again, someone with like a climate tech background. And then finally, the criminal justice space, we have found that there's a lot of work to be done in the criminal justice space within Congress in regards to tech, and there's a lot of like interest from those offices and committees. And so what that really looks like is in the past, we have looked for people who were more tech generalists, and because you end up having to work on you end up having to be flexible and working on whatever kind of comes up. Something can be like you could really be going in focused on wanting to work on like AI regulation, but if like a huge company, oh wow, CrowdStrike, I was gonna say like the CrowdStrike thing, then suddenly you're gonna have to work on like data security and like data privacy for a couple weeks because that's where your office needs to focus on. So anyway, in the past, we've been looking for tech generalists generally. And so in the past, like if you had a tech background and you had like a law degree or some experience working in policy or law, that was we saw that as a bonus. And now really the difference here is that we would be looking at kind of those two realms of experience like equally. So for example, if you haven't necessarily like delivered a product before, but you have worked on worked in a law office on bringing cases either against or working with tech companies, that is the kind of experience that we're now weighting we're giving higher weight than we have in the past. I hope that makes sense. Um, Ultimately, we are looking for people who understand how technology works well enough to be able to then break that technology down to people who are non-technical. Like that is the main competency that we are looking for. And you have to be able to do it succinctly and easily enough for them to understand, but have it still be accurate enough that they genuinely do understand. So if that sounds like you, please apply. And so a couple details about recruitment and selections. We have applications are due at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on July 2nd. Like I said, we accept citizens and DACA recipients. We will definitely let you know. The application asks for your references. Just to be clear, we will let you know before we contact your references. We won't, we definitely won't reach out to them before giving you a heads up, so you can give them a heads up. And then I would really encourage you to read the blog and check out the podcast to learn more about like what it looks like day to day, and also learn more about how to like think about your application. And I just want to be really clear that like I know that imposter syndrome can prevent great people from applying to jobs, particularly when, you know, in this case, for a lot of people, this would be a pivot. And we don't want to miss out on working with you just because you don't have all of the experience outlined here. If again, the core competency is, do you understand technology enough and to and can communicate well enough to be able to break down complicated technical concepts to non-technical people. If you think you can do that, we want you to apply. That's it. That's my monologue. Can we get some questions? Maya or Christina?
We've been answering some questions in the chat. I'm trying to look for new ones. Oh, someone is asking what we mean by digital service delivery.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's what I mean by that is like, so like I said, if you have worked in government, or in another organization that I would say has quite a bit of bureaucracy. So for example, I think the healthcare industry is a really good example of that. Or like finance. If you have experience delivering digital products within an environment like that, we would love to see you apply. The biggest difference here is like in the past, we would probably be looking more for like engineers or technical product managers, and you know, maybe some more kind of a little more like I guess coding minded designers. And in this case, we're opening that up more to, you don't have to be a product manager, even if you don't have a technical background, a project manager, but we're looking for like, have you delivered the product essentially?
Okay, so someone is asking what types of questions are asked during the interview process, which we can't really get into specifics, but
Yeah.
we are looking for an ability to answer, like explain technical concepts, as well as like emotional intelligence, so, like working with people across the aisle, as well as like a desire to work in public service.
Oh, and let me real quick actually just outline this should have been in my script, but I think I forgot to add it. The timeline. So applications will close. We'll have our review board review all of the applications. And then we will start we'll likely start interviewing in August and September. The goal is for us to have all offers out and all offers accepted by the end of October. So that's the timeline.
There are some raised hands, Grace. Are we taking live questions now or at the end?
Yeah, we can take live questions now.
Okay, I'm seeing a hand raised from Tamiyan Nasir. Tommy, I'd like to come off mute.
Hi, how are you doing, Grace?
Hi.
So I just had a quick question as to for the application, what are the best things for applicants to highlight to kind of show that besides their experience, their ability to explain technical concepts? Would you say things like a blog or a post or maybe like a sample? Are those things? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So here's what I'm going to say. All questions about like the application, my answer is largely going to be it depends, which is why we have like your applications are reviewed by 3 people, so we get multiple viewpoints on everyone, and so yeah, so my answer is essentially it depends, but I would say I think what is going to carry the most weight are the essays on the application. Definitely, you can definitely include blog links to a blog or to like GitHub repo, but ultimately we weight answers to the essays more, and so I think that's the best place to kind of showcase your ability to do that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
We also have 2 more questions, Grace. Next up is Lindsay O'Neill. Lindsay, you can come off mute. Oh, never mind. We have Nisha Kargi. Nisha, you can come off mute.
Hi.
Sorry, I was actually going to say, I just wanted to elaborate on my question. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I must have muted myself by accident. I'm sorry.
No
I was just
worries.
going to ask, I put my question in the chat, but I was just curious about the climate-focused technology. What areas specifically is the kind of selection panel thinking in terms of climate tech solutions? Is it like more software GIS kind of focused down that line, or is it more like broadly agrivoltaics, like the technology of energy and things like that?
We're honestly keeping it pretty broad on purpose because this is so just last year for the first time we were looking for a climate tech fellow, someone who but for the first time ever last year we had like a specific vertical that we were looking to fill. So to be honest, we are keeping that really pretty broad in general. The big difference is that with these verticals, we essentially when we send out that email blast that I mentioned, the mail merge to all of the offices, we target offices that have expressed interest or have some like either committee alignment or like have shown that they are interested in technologists. We then with the different verticals, we then target different offices and target them a little differently. That is kind of all to say that no matter what, even if you're coming in, which to us is sort of a more like specific vertical and how we're thinking about it, you still will need to work on a broad range of issues like within climate tech. So I would kind of be ready to do that. And thus, as we're evaluating applications, we're keeping that as like it's a pretty broad criteria.
Thank you so much.
So I have a few more raised hands, Grace, in addition to questions in the chat. Let me know if you'd like to save those for the end. Otherwise, we can continue with the live questions.
Yeah, are there any Timur or Maya or Christina, were there any particular questions in the chat you're seeing a lot that we should raise up first?
Well, someone asked how strict is the 2 to 6 years of experience? Can individuals who have less experience apply?
No, it is strict. The one exception is, this is on the application on the website. So basically, when we say years of experience, we usually mean work experience, and we mean work experience at a full-time job. We're not counting internships like during school. I would say the one exception to that, particularly sort of the nuance to that, is if you have a master's in a relevant field, that we count as 2 years of experience, and you can apply for the Congressional Innovation Fellowship. But that still is essentially 2 years of experience. It's just 2 years of experience in academia. That's kind of how we think about it. So you have to have at least 2 years.
If there are no more questions in the chat, we have some live hands. So Nisha, go ahead. And apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Please do feel free to correct me.
No, you're pronouncing it correct. Thank you. Hi, Grace. I joined a little late, and this might be redundant. I did hear you say that in this intake, you are not specifically looking for engineers alone. So again, just to elaborate on that, what if there is somebody who matches the work criteria 2 to 6 or 8 years experience working at product manager or project manager, they technically don't always have GitHub or, blogs. We usually write document and delivery document. I don't see on the application any spot to use that as work sample. How do we circumvent that other than essay?
So that's really why we weight the essays so heavily. Is we really are looking at, like, here's what I'll say. Ancillary documents are at best going to be kind of used as like a tiebreaker. Really are looking, we largely are looking at the materials that you directly provide us, like the at your answers to the questions, because that's kind of the way that we can keep it the most like even and fair and kind of the same. So I would say if you don't have anything publicly available, that's okay. And it's not going to like impede your application.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have, and apologies once again if I mispronounce your name, Jamie.
Hey, good afternoon. You nailed it. Appreciate that. Grace and team, thank you so much for putting on this event for all of us. I have a very simple question, but important. So in the application, the essay space, the word space that we have is pretty concise and terse, and it's very tempting to want to put a lot of stuff into the resume because there's no specified limit on that. Any recommendations on resume length or the format or the content of the information that we are presenting in the resume?
Yes. So I would say try to keep your resume 2 pages or under. That would be my request to all of you. You may have government resumes. I myself have a government resume. I would love to not read a bunch of 8-page resumes, again, as someone who currently has one. So I would say keep your resume to 2 pages, going on to the 3rd if you must. But that would kind of be my general recommendation there. And I would say the thing to think about is like more information. So much of the writing that you do in Congress will have to be actually pretty condensed. It's often like days of research that you then have to condense into these like really small things. And so like either like kind of condense into just a single oversight letter, which is usually 1 page, or anyway. And so yeah, so I would say this is a good time to practice that.
Understood. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
So we do have 2 more raised hands, but I'll pause here and ask Christina and Maya if there are any questions in the chat that need to be addressed.
Yes, so I've seen a lot of questions about having over 6 years of experience. So if you have over 6 years of experience, you qualify for the mid-career track. We have an early and a mid-career track. So like you won't be disqualified if you have over 6 years.
To be clear, there is no 2 qualified. The distinctions between the early career track and the mid-career track are really mid-career and up. For example, we just in our last cohort had someone who had, like, what did Dean have? Like 25, 30 years of experience. He was coming in as having been a professor. So yeah, there is no too much experience.
Okay.
Oh, I do see a question about what does the end of the fellowship look like when people are kind of looking to stay in Congress, or if it says find outside opportunities, what support is provided. So like I said, we do have a career coach that we offer all of our fellows 3 sessions with. And we are, like the staff as well as alumni are happy to make introductions as we can. And I would say the biggest thing is that like it is easiest to get hired into Congress when you already work in Congress. And that is sort of how we think about this year is like, really start, we prompt our fellows to start about halfway through their fellowship to start thinking about what they want to do next. If they want to stay in Congress, to kind of start to have coffees and start to, really ramp up that job search. If you want to go to private, you can usually wait longer than you don't have to start in July like we're going to prompt some people to do next week. But but generally that's like the support that we offer. We really try to introduce everyone to have, like I said, we have every quarter we have a networking event, so you can meet other people in the public interest tech space and kind of see what other kind of roles and jobs are out there. So that's the support that we provide. I do just want to acknowledge it's a really tough job market generally right now. And so I want to be very clear about the support that we offer, and we absolutely do have fellows who, like, we have fellows from our most recent cohort who finished up and are still looking for jobs. A lot of them got jobs. 2 people did get jobs in Congress. But it's a difficult job market right now, and I think that is I just want to acknowledge that, and we really do understand that people who do this fellowship are you're taking a risk because you're signing up to have a job that ends after a year, and that we provide as much support as we can, and we really try to help people network and build their networks in the city and in the space. But I mean, that's why it can be difficult that's why we're so glad that so many of you are interested, because it's not always easy to recruit, because I mean, it's a choice that you have to make, and we understand that it's a little bit of a sacrifice.
Oh, we have 2 more hands raised. First one from, not to belabor the point, but please do correct me if I mispronounce your name. Chai, please go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm impressed. Chai. Uh, thanks. Thank you so much, Grace, and everybody, for all the information today. I was wondering if you've noticed the experience of your most recent cohort, being distinct from prior cohorts in any way, just because of some changes with the current administration.
I mean, I think yes, just in that, when I read off the statistics that about a third go to government, that largely has about half of that third, so about a sixth, I guess, have gone to executive branch agencies. There's a hiring freeze right now, so that in and of itself is definitely different. We do have people who are, so I anecdotally think more people are kind of going civil service route, or civil society route, and a couple people are looking at states. I think that's kind of the biggest difference, but also, to be honest, I've only experienced 3 total cohorts being in TechCongress. So I don't have a ton of personal experience to be able to contrast against. But yeah, I mean, we had about the same number of people I know go back to private sector in this last graduated cohort than we had before.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, next up, we have a question from Amin. Amin, go ahead.
Thank you very much, everybody, for having this. This has been very insightful. If you could do me a favor and just go into more of the dynamics of the assigned teams, and specifically on the Republican and Democratic offices, are any of the offices you're staffing currently requesting someone who's affiliated with that particular party, or is it mostly just generalized and
Hmm.
open and not necessarily stacked?
Yeah, good question. So just first of all, we really don't assign offices. We really are helping you. Like I said, it's like a mini condensed job search. So we really are kind of helping you find the office that you want to be in for the year, and that seems like the best fit. So that's pretty fellow driven. When it comes to Democrat versus Republicans, you will need to choose a side.
Yeah.
And so Democratic offices, they want to hire Democrats, and Republican offices want to hire Republicans. So that is, you will need to choose a side, which we will kind of talk about for those of you who, if you end up applying, once you get to the interview stage, we talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like. But just, we do want to be upfront that, yeah, you will have to
Absolutely.
make a decision.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Still got a couple more live questions to go through, but I'll pause and ask Maya and Christina if there are any questions in the chat to address.
Someone asked if we anticipate more applicants this year due to the job market and employment landscape.
We have gotten more this year by this point in our application being open than we have in the past. That's really like, so I think yes, question mark. But we're really not sure. Yeah, we obviously don't have any patterns to draw on, so but we do have more currently than we did at this point last year and the year before. And I would say every year our number of applications has increased anyway. So we're kind of always prepared for there to be more applications, but we'll see.
Someone is also asking about independence in relation to like the question before the last one you just answered.
Yes. So I would say, to be totally honest, that is not, it's really just not something that we've run into. There are very few elected officials who are independent. If you are really passionate about working for a specific, like independent candidate, or I guess not candidate, representative, specific like independent office, I would say like it's worth applying and making that clear in your application. And that is something that we genuinely like very well may consider. But you cannot go through placement with multiple sides. Like you can't go through placement on both sides essentially. So really the reason we just honestly haven't run into someone being really passionate about working for a specific independent representative. But if that is you, I would really encourage you to apply and make that clear in your application. We'll absolutely consider you. I think that'll just be it'll end up being a pretty bespoke experience because we'll have to reach out first and see if they're interested in you before we hire you. But yeah, so I would say if that's kind of where you're coming from, I think it's still worth you applying and just making that really clear. But you do unfortunately just when you get to placement, you just have to pick a side, and that's really how Congress works. It's staffers don't switch back and forth.
Someone is also asking if we've had an experience where selected fellows have had difficulty finding placement or being hired during the fellowship.
Oh, I mean, a little. I would say it usually takes people between 3 and 4 weeks to find their placement. We have definitely had people who it has taken like 5 weeks. In a couple cases, I think it's probably taken 6 weeks, but we have only had one fellow who ultimately didn't get placed, and that person did have an offer, but they didn't take it. So the answer is not really. It's pretty rare to have a lot of difficulty during placement. I will say people do find it very stressful. So in terms of that, I think it's sort of difficult to navigate. But we try to support. That's why we have the alumni advisors, because it is stressful. But we've had it in the vast majority of our 130 plus fellows. It's worked out.
The person who asked the question about independents having more flexibility, he says, do independents have more flexibility because it doesn't really matter where they're placed?
No, because it does matter. So that's kind of what I'm trying to make very clear is if you want to serve with a representative who is independent, you can do that. You ultimately, unless that is the case, you will have to choose if you're going to pursue working with Democratic offices or Republican offices. We're going to ask you to choose during the selection process. So just to make that clear, you will have to make that choice. You yourself have flexibility because you can kind of do more research and decide which way you want to go. Whereas, some people may kind of feel strongly one way or the other already. But in terms of our process, you will not have more flexibility.
All right. And we can move on to Martha. Maybe you can come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, sorry. You were a bit muffled, but I am hoping you said my name.
Yes, I did. Apologies.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for putting this on. I will have to jump in a second, but I was wondering, I put this in the chat, but I was wondering about, how widespread knowledge of this program is in congressional offices and like how these fellows are utilized. Are they utilized enough? I guess a concern of mine is, arriving in an office and then being like very underutilized and somewhat bored. So I'm curious, like sort of the rates of that happening, how congressional offices are educated about how to use these fellows, etc. So yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So I would say, in terms of like how much do congressional offices know about this program, what I will say there is we get many more requests for fellows than fellows to fill them. So that's been true for now several years. And I'm already getting requests for you all. So that in terms of, there being available offices, I don't think that's something you should worry about. In terms of like being utilized, that is really where we go through several units in orientation towards the end of orientation about how to run your own placement process. And that is where you're going to want to ask a lot of questions of the offices. And that's what I mean when I say that it really is like a little job search, because you want to make sure that you're landing in the place where you want to be. So for example, we have definitely had fellows in the past who sometimes felt like they weren't, especially in the first several months, like they weren't necessarily being utilized as much as they wanted. And in most of those cases, what they ended up needing to do was having kind of a lot more initiative to bring forward issues and things that they wanted to work on, and then like build like consensus and kind of build like coalitions around that. Which if you want more autonomy, that is kind of the way to go, I would say. I think then the other side is people who have kind of come in and been handed stuff right away. Often, in that case, that might be a bigger team, and they might actually have a very senior, like a much more senior member on staff who has at least been working on tech policy, even if they don't necessarily have as deep of a background as you. And so those offices, that person might be, they are often more ready with like assignments immediately. So it's really to think about like what experience you want to have and interviewing and choosing appropriately.
Got it. That's super helpful. Thank you.
I have a question from Lindsay. Lindsay, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I know that you guys have previous recordings. I've looked through a few. I've looked at sessions like this. Do you know, are there any application question specific focused sessions, things on like how to kind of format your narrative, I saw like the policy question one.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if there's other ones on like kind of crafting your narrative and things like that.
So we definitely have a couple blog posts around applications, but I think the policy question recording though is the main one that we have around the application.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll follow up to see if I can find those. Thank you very much.
And a question from Evan. Evan, go ahead.
So I saw a question in the chat regarding the anonymity of the application, and I didn't see an answer to it, but the question was essentially the application is asking us to not include our name in, but it all result, you include your LinkedIn or personal website. So is that, I guess, how do we mitigate that anonymity requirement there?
Yeah. You were breaking up a little, but I think I got the gist of your question. So I'll answer, but let me know if I missed a part. Anonymity of the application. That's what I mean when I say that your essays are weighted so much heavier. We do a couple rounds of review of applications, and the main one, the one where you get rated where your application is rated by 3 different people, that is anonymous. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that like the ancillary links are like, as we're making specific decisions down the line in selections is pretty long, as can kind of tell from the timeline. And that's because we do it in several rounds. And part of why we do that is because we do want our kind of like main round to be anonymous. So that's how it works. So that's why like you should definitely focus on the essays and your resume.
All right. I haven't been scanning the chat, so I defer to Maya and Christina in case there are any pending questions to address.
Yeah, someone asked if there's a difference in expectations both on the application and during the fellowship for senior fellows.
Maya, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Are there differences in expectations both on the application and during the fellowship for senior fellows?
Oh, okay. I see, but yeah. Not really, to be honest. It's in terms of the work that you're doing, no. I mean, I think different offices probably have a little bit different expectations if they have someone like if they're working with someone who has 15 years of experience versus somebody who has 2. So I think in that sense, like everyone kind of all fellows kind of have their own individual relationship with their offices, and I do think that there are often different expectations based on level of experience there. In terms of us, no, I mean, we totally understand that if you have fewer years of experience, your resume will not be as long. But that is kind of part of what we mean when we say that we're trying to have a balanced cohort. We do want a mix of early and mid-career. And to be honest, actually, this past round, this current cohort has majority early career. So it really does depend a lot more on, someone with 15 years of experience can write a policy essay that's just not, it's just not going to make the cut, versus somebody with 2 years might write an incredible one. So that's again, kind of what I mean when I say like, we really are like weighting your application essays highly.
Another question, someone is asking if there's a breakdown of the verticals we're looking for.
There's a list in the application.
Like in terms of like percentages, like are we looking for like, yeah.
No, we're not, we haven't set percentages. It really depends on who applies. Like these are the verticals that we're targeting and we've been targeting with recruitment. But it is entirely possible that we may not get a fellow in like one of the verticals if we don't see an applicant who we think is like a good fit, who has that background.
Another question is, are resumes preferred to be 1 page or should we really flesh out our experience? I think you said up to 2 pages, preferably.
Yeah, preferably up to 2 pages. Yeah.
Another question, in the essays, should I avoid mentioning a public website I developed that could reveal my name if you visited the website?
I mean, I don't really know how to answer that, but maybe. If it's the best, if it's the best example of your work, then you should give it. We do like for our applications to be anonymous, but also people aren't really gonna like go digging to try to find your name. So I think use your best judgment there.
Are you able to apply again after you complete your fellowship? I want to say no.
No, you can only do this once.
Yeah.
So far, at least. We may change. It's entirely possible that one day we may change our fellowship, our rules. I know that there are fellowships that are 2 years, which I theoretically like the idea of. We're just, not at a place to be able to do that. But right now it would just be one year. Yeah.
Another question, is there a wait list in the event that round 1 select candidates need to opt out?
Yes, but sort of. Not really. It is unlikely that you will get a wait list email. We really that is kind of partially why selections is so long is we don't like to have a wait list because a lot of our fellows do move to the DC area and we don't want people to feel like they, have to be making that decision like 2 weeks before. So not really. It's unlikely that you would get notified that you were on a wait list. Our goal is to have everyone know that they have been accepted and for us to know that they've accepted that offer by before November 1st, so by the end of October. So I may be making a lot of offer calls on Halloween, I guess.
Another question, I think we're like up to date on all the questions. To understand correctly about anonymity, can links have our name in the URL, for example, like a GitHub repository?
Right. So again, if you include links, that's okay. We are asking for them. So in kind of the main round of application review, they won't be reviewing your links. So that's okay. Again, with making your application anonymous, do your best, but also include your best work. So I would say like follow our instructions, but you don't need to follow instructions that we haven't given, if that makes sense, around anonymity.
Another question about the verticals. Is there a place to indicate formally you want to apply to a vertical, or is that just based on the content of your essays?
Oh, it's pretty much based on the contents of your resume. I think if you are really, if you want to be really clear and indicate that, I think I would say the move would probably be to either indicate that in one of your answers to questions, or you could even do it on your resume. But it's honestly, it's a little more nebulous than that. Like I said, we're not looking for a specific percentage, but we just want to for this cohort, we want to really encourage some people with specific backgrounds to apply. And to be totally honest, like I said, like it is possible that we may not fill a vertical this year. We're really testing this out. Last year we tested it out with the climate tech fellow, and that was a little bit because we found someone who fit that description, and we had been wanting to test out verticals. We hadn't decided we were going to test out the climate tech one last year until we saw Shoria's application. So it's going to be kind of similar this year. If we feel like your application fits into one of these verticals, then that's kind of how we'll start to it'll help us figure out how we want to like target your placement, and also we'll talk to you about it in the selections process. So it won't like be a surprise that you show up here and you find out that you're here for the for like the digital delivery vertical. But and also it's like I said, we're sort of experimenting with it. So we don't have that's why we don't have, set criteria for each one.
So it's
Someone is asking,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no. You mentioned we have to commit to a political party beforehand. Does that mean we should choose only one in the app, or does that selection happen later during interviews?
It'll happen during interviews. So don't worry about it too much in your application. Like just think about, we asked the question for, what members you would want to serve with. Yeah, for 3 members that you want to serve with. So just be honest and pick your 3 that you want to serve with. We just want to make it clear that we'll talk to you about it in more detail during selections. And if you are like unsure, and you want to talk, and you need more time to think about it, like we can be flexible around that. We know that it isn't cut and dry, and it's not necessarily like an easy decision for everybody to make. And that is totally fine. Like your application will be, it will not impede your application if you have members listed from different political parties at all. It's more that I want to make it clear. Some people have just kind of struggled with making that choice by the time they get to placement in the past. So now we're trying to let people know earlier, just so you can start to think about it. But I really want to make it very clear, like, if you are an independent, you should apply. You should definitely apply and say which members you want to work with. And we'll kind of talk about with you. And it also, honestly, with some people in the past, it has really come down to like what their issues are, who's in power, what committee they want to work for. And in some cases, it might just like make more sense for you to go to one party versus the other. And we can really talk about that. But that's kind of why we that's why I'm kind of trying to emphasize it, is just in the past, I think people have felt a little blindsided when they had to choose. And so we're just trying to be very upfront that like eventually you are going to have to pick a side to interview with.
Another question, is there a preference for you to see a member of Congress in our application over a chair or ranking member of a committee we're interested in? I want to say no.
What? I don't really know what that means.
Hi, that's my question. I'm looking at the application now, and you're all asking to rank 3 members. But if we don't have a member of Congress, or if we're interested in working on a committee, please identify the chair or ranking member of that committee. Are you preferring to have the member of Congress, or is there a preference for a member of Congress, or is there a preference if we decide to put down a name for the ranking member?
Oh, there's really not a preference. It's up to you.
Okay, so there's no like ranking, like if an applicant decides to put.
No.
Okay.
No. We definitely have people work with committees as well as personal offices, and we kind of get into how to make that choice once we get to like the end of orientation and you start getting ready for placement. It's just like there's just pros and cons that you'll want to think about. And some people apply thinking that they definitely want to do one and not the other, and then they change their mind by the time like once they're interviewing and it's time to make a decision. So yeah, there's no preference there. And I think we'll take one more question and then I think we'll wrap.
We're all caught up in the chat.
Okay, great.
Just wish me luck. I already applied. Actually, a little while
Good luck.
back.
Yay, thanks, Donnie.
Yeah. Sorry, that's why I didn't have any questions. I researched and I already applied. So
Awesome. Yeah, Lindsay, you can do the last question.
Take the last one. Awesome. I'm so sorry to jump in. I was like, okay, I've already asked so many. The last one is just really focused on the I'm gonna go back and watch the videos that you guys are previously recorded, but I guess like in terms of the policy recommendation question, I'm just looking at that one a lot. I'm putting a lot of the efforts there. I'm just curious because it seems like there's like a role-playing aspect and I just don't have the words to like get into that. So I'm curious, like, should I really put a lot of the heft into like dropping congressional like recommendations, very literal, like on congressional, like recommendations that are very focused on like writing out the names of the acts or legislative pieces that have already been, like, oh, tack on to this or focus on like, like where should I spend my words, I guess? Like, do you recommend?
Totally get that. Yes. I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole and make this thing like 3 pages long. So I totally get that. So for that question in particular, again, like what we're really looking for is like for that core competency of can you explain technical concepts to non-technical people. So you want to think about like what your recommendation is and how you can. So I would focus more on sort of the non-technical aspect than the Congress aspect, if that makes sense. Like if there are related acts, use the acronyms. You do not have to spell them out, like that kind of thing. Yeah, I would focus more on communicating like the technical concepts than tying it into kind of the congressional world.
Okay, so quick follow-up on that. So is this like we're writing a letter to the senator?
it's a memo. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's
a memo, like as though they're reading this and like
Yes.
I should direct it towards them directly. Okay,
Exactly.
That's very, very helpful because it was not clear in the instructions. Okay, thank you.
And like I will say, like we
Sorry.
have had no, it's okay. We have definitely had like people interpret it a little differently, and not get disqualified and ultimately get hired. But that is kind of the intention of the question.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining. It was so great to see how many people are interested in applying this year. I encourage all of you to take a look at the blog posts and the recordings that we have, and to apply by July 2nd. And if you already have, thank you so much. And we're excited to be in touch.
All right. Thank you for having me. You have a great day. Thanks everybody.
Yeah, everyone else too.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.